Hello everyone. In this video we will be addressing loops and we will be introducing arrays. A loop, like I explained in class, is a block of code that allows you to execute that code repeatedly until the program meets a condition. These loops are used in case the program needs to execute or operate several things very fast in a very small amount of time before the program continues on working. So for example, in the movie that we have in front of us, I have the movie playing that we've been working with since the beginning of the class. And I want to create 10 copies of that movie clip dynamically on the stage. To do that, I need to make sure that the movie clip has been shared for ActionScript, meaning that I have created a class called playing of that particular movie clip. So I'm going to go into its properties window and I am going to make sure that I click on export for ActionScript. As you can see, this creates a class called plain, and that's the reason why we use a capital letter at the beginning of the naming of the movies when we create a symbol. Because if we're going to be sharing for ActionScript, the name of any class that you create needs to start with a capital letter. Now, the program knows that this is a movie clip and therefore attaches any of the properties that come with the movie clip class to that new movie class that I am creating. Remember, if you look through your notes, you will find that a class is an object. Basically, any of the objects that I am creating within the display object within the library will be of movie clip type, and therefore the program knows that it needs to add all of those properties to the new class that I am creating. When I click OK, it's going to tell me, hey, you don't have a class of type plain in your library, but I can generate it for you when you export the SWF file, basically telling me, hey, you just created a new class and I don't have it in my library. Is it okay if I create it on runtime? And I'll tell them, yes, of course, that's what I want. I want to make sure that I can share it for ActionScript. That said, basically I have a new movie clip that I can share from the library. So to do that, I need to go to my ActionScript window, to my Actions window, and I'll create a variable of type plain, and that is that variable instance plain of type plain equals new plain. If I wanted to add this to the stage right now, I could just simply say add child plain, as in the instance that I just gave it, and if I test this movie, I should get a plain on the upper left hand corner of my screen because I didn't define X or Y positions for what I am adding. But what you'll notice is that I have nothing on the stage, yet when I run the movie, I am adding the plane dynamically onto the stage. Now, we had done this in class, I want to say class, the second or the third class. And this is how you dynamically pull items from the stage. So you could either move this onto the stage by hand, or you could call it dynamically by using code. Now, the declaration of the plane variable doesn't mean that you need to add the plane right away. As a matter of fact, I don't want to do that in this case because I want to add 10 instances of this particular plane, 10 instances of this movie clip onto the stage. And to do that, I want to do it through that for loop. I want to repeat it 10 times. I want to say 10 times, hey, add a movie, and that way I can make use of that very fast execute code inside the loop. So how do I do that? Well, let me truncate this sentence, then I'll just simply make the declaration of the variable, and I'll stop it at that point. And then I'll remove this. I don't want to add anything to the stage just yet. So that with the declaration of the plain variable of type plain, that's basically I am telling the movie I will add a variable of type plain at some point. Now what I want to do is a loop consists of three parts. The loop basically has a what we call an initial statement, then it's followed by a condition, which is the condition that we need to meet, and then a change statement, or what is it that I am trying to measure, how am I measuring my loop. So how does that look in code? Well, first and foremost, what I just said tells me that I need to have some sort of counter. I need to make sure that I have some sort of variable that allows me to count through how many loops I want to go through. So for that, I am going to use a variable of type number. So I'm going to create a variable I of type number, and I'm going to assign a value of 0. I don't have to assign a value at this point. but I want to assign a value to it just to have it. Now, what I'm going to do for the loop is I'm going to use a for statement. The for statement reads as follows: for I equals 0. That is my counter, and it starts at 0. You'll notice that I am assigning a value of 0 to I. You might ask yourselves, why do I have to repeat 0? Well, this I value here is the value for my for loop, just for that particular instance, just in that piece of code. If I was equals to 5 here, this will reset it to 0 if I wanted to start counting from 0. But I don't have to start counting from 0. I could say for I equals 10 and start counting from 10 if I wanted to. Basically, I can change that value to whatever I want. I am just going to count from 0 through 9 to be able to use this loop 10 times. So the syntax goes I equals 0, semicolon, then I'll say while I is less than 10, meaning that is the condition. If as I is less than 10, continue on doing this loop. If it's more than 10, then stop doing the loop. So while I is less than 10, semicolon, I plus plus. Now this I plus plus increases the value of I by 1. What that means is if my value was 0, then it will make it 1. If my value was 1, then it will make it 2, and so on and so forth. This I plus plus will increase that index until the value of I equals 10. If it gets to 10, then I no longer is no longer less than 10. If I equals 10, it no longer is less than 10, therefore the loop stops. That is the condition that I need to meet. So I'll close the parentheses, open up a bracket, and hit return. At this point, I want to add the plane to the stage. So I'll say plane equals new plane. That's when I want to add the plane. So now as I'm going through this loop, I am going to be adding a plane every time I go through the loop. So the first time I add a plane, the second time it adds another plane. Now to differentiate what happens is I'm going to, well, first let me add them to the stage. Each one of the variables that I am adding will be named plane as of now. And if I test this movie, I should see only one plane, and it should be on the upper left hand corner. In reality, I have 10 planes flying on the screen right now. I just have them one on top of one another because I never assigned different coordinates to each one of them. So what I'll say right now is I'll say plane. Let's separate them on the x-axis. Plane x equals 50 times I. Now, why times I? Why am I doing this? Well, I is the variable that will be increasing each time I go through the loop. The first time I go through the loop, the value of I is 0. The second time it's 1. The third time it's 2, and so on and so forth. So if this number is changing every time I multiply that by 50, my value of x will be increasing as I go through each one of the instances of the loop. So if I test this, now I can see that I have 10 planes across the screen. They're all about 50 pixels from each other on the x-axis. So that is one good use of the I variable, to be able to separate or make influence other properties of any of the movie clips that I am adding to the stage. So I can also add, by the way, I can change the name of each one of these guys. I can say plane.name equals, and I can add a alphanumeric value to them, such as plane, and then close the alphanumeric value with the string, and then say plus I. Now what that does, as I explained in class, I is a number by default. This is what I created, but once I add a number to an alphanumeric string, it makes that number an alphanumeric value. Therefore, plane 1, plane 0, plane 1, plane 2, plane 3 will all be numbers, and that will be the name that is assigned to each instance as I go through the loop. So the first plane that is added will be named plane 0. The second one will be named plane 1, plane 2, plane 3, and so on and so forth. But that 0, 1, 2, 3 at the end of the word plane is no longer a number. It's an alphanumeric value. Now, What I want to do at this point is I want to push everything into an array. What is an array? Well, an array is a list of values. For instance, if we want to have a list of characters that a player could choose from a game, we could add those names as a list, as an actual array, and then select from the array randomly. So in this how do you create those arrays? Like I explained in class, an array is like an egg box, and each one of the places inside the egg box is a container that will contain whatever data type I am adding to that specific array. First thing you need to do is you need to declare a variable of type array. So we'll call this variable planes with an S at the end, and we'll say this variable is of type array, and it equals a new array. We don't add anything to that array at that point. What I'm going to do is I'm going to push each one of the planes that I am creating through the code into the array. So the call for that is planes, the name of the array, push, and then the name of the item that I am adding to the specific spot on the plane. So now if you look at this, the length of my array at the end of this for loop should be 10. Each one of the places inside the planes array, each one of the addresses, each one of the egg places, each one of the holes, each one of the placeholders has its own address. They all start counting from 0. All arrays count from 0 up. So each one of them will be 0, then the next one will be 1, then the next one will be 2. They will have a place number within the array. Why am I making such a point about this? Well, I can now select one of the planes in my array, and I can go ahead and change a variable for it. So for example, by the way, let me execute this so you can see that nothing really has changed. I just simply added the code, and each one of them has been pushed into the planes array. Once again, an array is a list of values. Each one of the items in the list has its own address within the array. So what does that mean? Well, let me add a stage listener. Stage add event, and we have done this many times in class, listener, and I'm going to say this event is of type enter frame, and I'm going to call a function called move plane. Okay. Then I'm going to define a function. The function move plane is an event of type event. So nothing we haven't done in class. Then this function is going to do something. This function is going to look for, let's say, the third place in the array. So it will be planes, open square bracket, 3, and actually that would be the fourth place if I say 3. Let's say 2. 2 is the third place. Remember, the array starts counting from 0. So the first place on the array is place 0. The second one will be planes 1. The third one will be planes 2. So in this case, this, close the square bracket, and then X. Let's actually change the Y position. Plus equals 10. Now, if I execute this, the third plane on the list, the third plane on the array should start going down the screen. There you go. So you can actually call each one of these, and I can actually do one that does the following: planes for rotation plus equals 1. The fourth plane should start rotating. So you have the ability to call each one of them independently in the array. The array, like I said then, is a placeholder for a list of values, and each one of those values can be controlled or can be executed independently based on whatever it is that you're doing to that specific value.